We can bring in our international affairs editor, Rochelle Ferguson Bouyahi. Rochelle, good to see you. The EU has tools at its disposal. Do we know what they are?
Well, sure we do. We know that the EU currently has several tools at its disposal. They've been weighing up, as you mentioned there, over the weekend, possible retaliatory tariffs on American goods. 93 billion euros would be the tune of which we're talking about. You may remember back in summer, those tariffs were threatened by Europe. They then came to a deal with Donald Trump, and it was decided there would be a climb down from that. European leaders this weekend are evoking that again, saying, look, this might be a possibility for us. We could reactivate this measure, which would touch duties on US cars, industrial goods, food and drink. So that's one possibility there, and we can talk a bit about that in a second. Another possibility is something that's never been done before, Delano. It's known commonly as the big bazooka, or its formal term is an anti-coercion instrument. Now, that instrument was ultimately conceived, if you will, in response to China some time ago. It would allow kind of wide-ranging punitive measures, and it's used when a country is trying to force another to do what it wants, either using economic coercion or, as we're seeing in the case with Donald Trump, this 10% levy, which could go up to 25% later in the year if Europeans don't get on board as far as Donald Trump is concerned. Again, this anti-coercion instrument, never been used before. Remains to be seen how much time it could take to get that actually into play and to make that work against Donald Trump. We're hearing this kind of growing chorus of leaders. You spoke about Keir Starmer there. Georgia Meloni has said, these tariffs would be a mistake. You have the Dutch foreign minister saying that this is essentially tantamount to blackmail, what we're seeing here. The fact of this is that, the echoes that we're getting coming out of the EU is that there's no consensus on what kind of, punitive measure or retaliatory measure might be used against Donald Trump. A sense that there's still this fear from European leaders. We heard from Starmer, they're not particularly convincing, some might say, in how to go forward on this. So if no EU leaders agree on how to move forward, it leaves us in a bit of a conundrum in face of these tariffs. Several sources suggesting that even the idea of 93 billion euros is getting some European leaders saying they just want to talk with the US to avoid these tariffs there. So tricky position for Europe, still looking quite weak, it has to be said, in all of this.
And it's strange how you can put tariffs on individual countries when normally the EU has a tariff rate as a bloc. So
precisely.
The fine details we still have to figure out. But what is Donald Trump's justification for going ahead and doing this?
Well, look, the official response here is all about national security. Trump had previously said that, this is acquiring Greenland would be critical for US security. Just in terms of location, a reminder to our viewers, how key the location is. Obviously, between North America, the Arctic, that's well placed for kind of early warning signals if there are kind of missile attacks, or indeed to monitor vessels in the region. Trump has claimed on several occasions that if the US doesn't acquire this, Greenland, that ultimately Russia or China might end up acquiring it. Now, any security official that you listen to will say there is absolutely no immediate threat of China or Russia, acquiring this. But Trump nonetheless saying, if we don't take it, they will. If you look at another response as to why the US is so interested in this, we've been speaking a great deal about valuable natural resources in Greenland. A reminder, again, that we're looking at rare earth minerals. There's uranium, there's iron, and of course, there's oil and gas reserves, enormous oil and gas reserves. So while Donald Trump has said that, we're not interested in that, it's all about security, we have seen an interest in these kind of minerals with Ukraine. So, it could lead us to believe that ultimately this is one of the reasons why they're so keen to getting their hands on Greenland. Just important to say, a recent poll shows that Americans oppose US control of Greenland. There's just 17% of Americans who support the actual taking over Greenland. So not only are EU officials, particularly worried about this, but so are the populations both of Greenland and in the United States. So this is really far from a unanimous bid to get Greenland.
Yeah, this is something he was focused on last year, and then it dropped off the radar, and now it's back again. So
And not the first US leader to be interested in Greenland either.
really, okay, Rochelle, thank you very much for that, Rochelle Ferguson Buyahi there.